So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us this week and making time to join this webinar. So, today we felt that there were many queries which was coming across, especially when we do a checkpoint creation or audit type configuration. So we thought, why don't we take expert advice and also understand how useful each of this feature are and how it can be configured in the multiple use cases or basis the best use of the features. Why don't we take the expert advice and discuss this with our product head. So we have Mr. Santosh, who's our product head, who's also a co-founder of the Audit 360. So Santosh, welcome to this session.
Yeah, thanks, Ramya. Hi, everybody. So, I'm not an audit expert, but from my, understanding and from during my conversations with clients and prospect, to the best of whatever I've understood about audits, and based on the concept of Audit 360 as to what we have tried to achieve, how we have tried to conceptualize each of the features and functionalities in the product, I'd try and answer the questions. I understand that these are questions that have come from many of you over a period of time during the onboarding process or post onboarding when you were trying to create new audits, add new checkpoints. These are questions that have come from you over a period of time. So I'll try and answer all of this to the best of my abilities. I hope this session helps you uh, in handling audits better, and in making better use of Audit 360 as a software solution.
Yes, Santosh. These are all the queries which we would be discussing with basis the multiple interactions during our initial discussion or with whenever we do the onboarding activity, migration activity with the clients. So certain queries which we felt that which can be discussed here have been will be taken up in this session.
Okay.
So Santosh, our first question would be on the first module which we have in our Audit 360. It's related to the checkpoint screen. So in checkpoint screen, we all see there is something called expected action from auditor. So we would like to know when do we have to choose verify and when as both, because which according to me, we feel that the both has a essence of the same of verify, but why do when do we choose this specifically only verify? When do we choose it as a both?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Just for the interest of people who are joining now, and for others, this a recorded session of a recorded version of this session would be uploaded onto our YouTube channel, and we shall be sharing the link with you. And also, while Ramya is representing on your behalf and asking questions, you may please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A section. We'll try to pick up those questions and answer those as well. The whole idea of today's session is to answer all of your questions with respect to checkpoint creation and audit creation. So coming back to Ramya, your question, which is verify and both. So I'll just take a minute to explain what are the expected actions, what are the possible actions from the auditor's side that can be configured. So there is verify, which is about a question and the answer. Ideally, the auditor is verifying a certain fact, a certain control, whether it is existing in reality at the auditees in the auditees process or at the premises, as the case may be, and then recording the compliance in the form of a yes or no. There are a couple of things partial or not applicable, etc. These are available. Now, what is input? Not always all checkpoints are in the mode of a question. At times, there are points to be checked where there is a information that has to be captured by the auditor, which we call as input in Audit 360. So both is nothing but a combination of both this verification and input. So having a certain control point or a checkpoint where the auditor has to verify as well as add a certain piece of information is what is called as both. So when you don't want to split the checkpoint, when you want both verification and input to happen under one common checkpoint, then we should be using both. So just if I have to give this, explain this with the help of an example. Now, if we talk about a branch audit and there is a teller audit that is happening, for the teller audit, there is a certain checkpoint in which maintenance of a register, say for example, the cash chest key register is that we are checking. If it is maintained if it is maintained until when, till what date is it updated? Or for that matter, if it is, say, a microfinance center meeting, is the field officer regularly visiting the center? And if so, when is the last entry that is made? Field officer, obviously, his visit is a must. So then we can think of, say, the branch manager. When is is the branch manager updating the visit register? If yes, when is the last update from the branch manager? That could be the question. So then both of this can be combined into one checkpoint. The date of last entry can be put under input. Under input, there are 6 to 7 different types of fields or the input modes that are available, which is text and number, date range, value, and percentage. So these 7 values, 7 different types of entries possible. In this case, when we are setting up the checkpoint, it has to be checked as verify and input. Under input, the input mode will be date. Yeah, Ramya. I hope
in this context, actually, well defined on how when we choose verify and both. But in the same context, certain times what happens that there would be some of the input to be captured only when there is a specific observation basis the compliance we identify during the audit execution. We would want some clients, some auditors to add any input only if there is a non-compliance or compliance being followed to a specific condition only. So is this possible and how do we achieve this?
That is very much possible. It is possible using the fourth option. If we see, I think all of us would have seen that different options that are possible. So then under the options input, verify, input, then there is both, and then there is something called both with condition. So there what we are doing is both. I explained what is both, that is verify and provide input. That is made conditional, subject to certain condition. So then in that case, the input can be made conditional to the selection of a certain confirmation by the auditor during the execution, which means if the auditor selects, yes, I need date as an input. If the auditor selects, no, I need text input, a text field as an input. If the auditor selects partial, then I need percentage as an input. Or if he selects NA, then I again need a text field as an input. This can be set up. So for yes, no, partial, or not applicable, there is a, each can have a different type of input value being called for. If I have to give an example for this, if the branch has a local body license which is available and displayed in the notice board, so the answer, if it is yes, then I need a date range. When is the validity from and to date? If it is no, then I would need why it is not displayed. So then it changes to the reason why it is not done. If it is partial, which means it is either available and not displayed, or it is not available, or because it is applied for, it is not received. There could be reasons like that. So then, some input values there. So for no and for partial, it could be a different set of input values. So for each possible answer, we are setting up a certain input. This is possible, and this is possible using both with conditions. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. Santosh, in the same checkpoint module, we also see that partial is a field which can be chosen as optional. It's not a non-mandatory field. However, we would want to understand what all we can achieve through partial as a compliance, and how is the scoring been associated with this?
So partial on the face of it is a very straightforward, it's a straightforward field. That is, not everything is either yes or a no. Yes is 100%, no is 0. There is always a possibility that the conformity is somewhere between 100 and 0. Now, in the plain and simple possibility, what we have done is that the percentage of adherence can be recorded using partial. And then in that case, the score of positive will be multiplied by the percentage that is given by the auditor, and then the actual score will be derived. So if the positive score is 10 and the conformance as a percentage is given as 30%, then the score will be given as 3. Now, having said that, this can actually be used in different ways. So, for example, in cases where samples are being checked, the auditor goes through a certain set of samples where recording the details at each sample level is not mandatory, but it is important to capture how many samples were verified and how many samples passed the verification. That is important. Then there are values that are there in partial, where the total verified samples and cleared sample numbers can be given. Based on that, the partial achievement will be considered, and obviously, like I said, the score will be applied in that case. Now, there is a third possibility where there is a impact. So, for checkpoints, there are two possible risk implications. There is an inherited risk that every controller checkpoint has, and then there is a impact or a possibility of that event occurring. That has to be verified. For that also, the same partial can be used. So then, based on whatever is selected, if the impact is very low, so then a high partial score can be given. The impact is actually very high, and then a lower the impact can be, the partial achievement can be kept towards the lower side, which then will take care of the scoring requirement. So then, where in case of the auditor deciding the impact of the risk based on the audit that is happening, so then in that scenario also the partial scoring can be used. So all of this is to make sure that the scoring is computed in a way that reflects the actual situation on the ground.
Okay. Like Santosh, then like how we have partial, which can cater into many things. So there is a question on the not applicable compliance as well. This has come up with one of the attendees actually. So what they're asking is when the audit has been executed, there for a certain checkpoints gets not applicable when they're executing the audit. So, but in that case, though they mark it as not applicable, they do not want to give a full score to the auditee as a beneficial. They would want to give a partial score. So, is a partial score, can we give a partial score in case of not applicable, and how do we score them?
This is in relation to partial, or is this with
Relation to be not applicable, similar like partial, even not
so in
applicable.
terms of not applicable, there are multiple possibilities. You know, we've seen over the years that different organizations have different approaches to not applicable scores. Some believe that it has to be a fixed score. Some believe that it has to be negative score. Some believe that it has, the whole, there has to be a certain logic in which the score is calculated. There is no right or wrong here. Whatever an organization follows, it is as per their approved auditing and scoring parameters. It is approved by the audit committee. That is correct for that organization. At a product level, we should be able to handle all of this. So there are three ways in which a partial scoring, a not applicable scoring can be handled in Audit 360. Now, this, unlike the other, what you call the other scoring approaches, this has to be dealt with at a checkpoint group level, because when I explain, you will understand this. It is not at an individual checkpoint level, but at a checkpoint group level that this scoring logic has to be set. Now, there are three logics the product has to treat not applicable, the possibility of not applicable control points. First one is to give a fixed score. So where, very plain and simple, the score of positive is 10, negative is 0. Partial, obviously, we said it will be based on the partial achievement. Then if it is not applicable, the score can be pre-configured as a fixed number. It could be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or any such number that the head of audit feels or the admin feels as logical and relevant. It could be any number. Now, the second possibility is a percentage of positive. This we have seen a lot of acceptance, a lot of organizations using this approach, where if there is a certain checkpoint which is not applicable, then the score will be a percentage of positive, which means giving a benefit of doubt to the auditee. If it was applicable, then, why do you need to be scored negative for that point? So then passing on, the benefit in the best judgment. So then it can be set as 30% of positive, or 50% of positive, or 70% of positive, whatever it is, as approved or as is followed by the organization. There is a third logic which probably is most widely used, is a redistribution logic. So here, say for example, there is a group of 10 checkpoints. Each of them have positive score of 10 each, which means the total of the group is 100. Then if there is one checkpoint which is not applicable for a certain auditee during a certain audit, so then what happens is this total score of 100 gets redistributed with the remaining 9 checkpoints. And based on whatever is the positive or negative that is getting recorded in the remaining checkpoints, the auditee achieves the score. So these are 3 ways in which not applicable scores can be treated. Now, having said this, I know Ramya, there will be a follow-up question to this as well. Having said this, this is not the end. These are the 3 pre-configured scoring logics that are available. Now, the world does not revolve around these 3 possibilities. There are clients who will definitely have a 4th or 5th different way of handling not applicable checkpoints. Then that is taken as a custom requirement and it will be handled as such.
Yeah. So we have one follow-up question from one of the attendee. As we are talking about partial scoring and NA scoring, the question they have asked is they would like to understand how does the multiplication happen in the audit scoring we do under the audit type configuration.
How does the
multiplication of the scoring logic?
Okay, fine, not a problem. So, general scoring logic, there is a what you call a risk level given to every checkpoint. That is the underlying risk of that particular control point, and that is represented by a number. So now first we assign a risk level to the checkpoints, which is low, medium, high, or zero tolerance. Zero tolerance is nothing but critical. Just that in Audit 360 we have used the terminology of zero tolerance. So there are 4 levels. First, we assign these risk levels at to every single checkpoint that we have. Then what we do is, at the time of configuring the audit, for these risk levels, we assign a weightage. That weightage again is as per what is the standards followed in the organization. Why a weightage? Because there has to be a higher score impact when it comes to compliance or non-compliance to a high risk or a critical risk point. So a very risky control is missed, then the scoring has to reflect that. We cannot treat a low risk item and a zero tolerance item at the same level when it comes to scoring and rating. It has to have its own weightage. So then this weightage, how will we apply to the overall score? So the individual score of the checkpoint gets multiplied by the risk weightage, so that for every single checkpoint, there is a weighted risk score that is available. So then that weighted risk score is what is considered, again based on achievement, that is what is considered for the total score of the audit, the achieved score of the audit, as well as then further towards the rating. So if I as an auditee have failed in 2 or 3 zero tolerant control areas, and I've also not followed a couple of high risk areas, it will definitely have a higher impact on the scoring, and therefore it will have a higher impact on my rating. Otherwise, if we were to treat all of this at the same level, as an auditee, there is no difference. There is nothing that is pushing me towards giving more attention to the high impact or the high risk areas of business. This is why we are treating it like this. Again, uh, the point here is that this is the Audit 360 way of approaching scores. Obviously, the product has capability of looking at scoring and rating models which are completely different from this. Yes, Ramya?
Yeah, thanks, Santosh, for clarifying that. The next query, what we have is like how we have multiple compliances available. There is a query which has come up that during audit execution, also an auditor observes multiple observation is been observed against a complaint. So that whatever they observe may not be very straightforward, which says is only an issue. There are chances where the multiple observations are observed. So in this case, how can an auditor capture multiple observations for the same checkpoint?
So I think this indicates to the dispositions that we have, the
Yes.
possible standard comments, which Audit 360 calls as dispositions. So previously, I'm sure there are clients who are part of this webinar who have seen the product earlier. There were 6 dispositions that were possible, and they were able to choose one among the 6. But as we moved on, we understood that that is kind of becoming little restricting. So what we have done, one, we have increased the number of dispositions. That is the standard remarks that can be configured by the admin at a checkpoint level for every possibility. So for example, yes, no, partial, not applicable. Each can have 12 possible business scenarios pre-configured for the auditor to choose from. And if more than one scenario seems to be applicable in the case of a certain auditee for a given audit, the auditor can multi-select now. So he can select 1, 2, 5 or all. Any combination is possible. Based on what he has observed, he can choose and move on. Does that take care, Ramya? Is that?
Santosh, yes, very much. Santosh, on your previous response on the risk multiplication or the audit score computation, the logic what we have, there is a follow-up question which is asked where they've asked us actually not a question, it's a request which has come asking us to give a live example, any live example we can opt or to give, justify on how the scoring can be
Just
managed.
to give a quick example, going back to the previous point, I'm keeping 10 as the score for every checkpoint in the examples for ease of giving the numbers. So if a positive score of a checkpoint is 10 and we look at 4 different risk level, the critical or zero tolerant risk level is kept as 5. Okay, so the weighted score for that checkpoint will become 10 into 5. 5 is the weightage, so it becomes 50. Now, as an auditee, if I achieve the score, I get 50. And if as an auditee, if I don't meet the control requirement, then I don't get the score at all. So when it is compared, say for example, when Ramya is an auditee, I am an auditee, we both are audited against the same controls. We both are similar size branches. There is a branch audit that is happening. For a control point, which is tagged as zero tolerant, Ramya meets that requirement. Ramya has cleared that control, which means Ramya gets 50 as a score. I am not done that, so I get 0. which means when a rating happens, when a comparison happens, Ramya, because she maintained a zero tolerant control well, she gets an advantage of 50 over me in terms of the score. Or I am being downgraded by 50, 50 marks because I've been found wanting in a zero tolerant control area. So then it will push me further. So then if multiple points are, treated by me like this, the audit will give me a similar treatment. Therefore, my scoring will go down and I may fail the audit. When I fail the audit, because I have not met zero tolerant or high risk requirements, then obviously it will have further impacts based on the organization's practice. It may have other impacts on me. So then that acts as a push on me as an auditee to take necessary care and make sure such high impact or zero tolerant areas are given the required attention.
Thanks, Santosh.
I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, it was more detailed, and I think the example what you gave was much clear. So I'll go back to the queries which we were asking. So we had spoken about the checkpoint configuration and all and thing. Now let us imagine we have already created the checkpoints. We map those checkpoints to audit type. But in certain scenario, what happens is a same set of checkpoints needs to be added to multiple audit types. As an organization, I will be doing multiple different type of audits for a different set of auditees. But I have very specific checkpoints which has to be commonly used in all the audits which we execute. So in this case, should we have to configure checkpoints multiple times to map to a respective audit type? Or is there a way where we can use the same checkpoints to the audit types?
So it is configuring multiple types is not required at all. A checkpoint can be used under different audit types. A checkpoint is normally grouped. It is not an individual checkpoint. It is a set of checkpoints which is grouped because, say, for example, it affects the same common sub process, and then therefore that group can be added to multiple number of audits.
Okay.
And just because we are adding a group, we are not stuck to, say, for example, a group has 15 checkpoints, and I'm adding that group from a detailed branch audit to a quick audit that has to be done by supervisory staff when they are visiting the branch. So when the audit team is doing the audit, it is a 3-day, 5-day process. But when there is a senior management member who is visiting the branch, he is also requested to do a quick audit of the branch just to get the high impact areas audited on a more frequent basis. So in that case, I can call for a group, and from the group of 15, I can choose to retain 3 or 4 checkpoints only. Rest I can avoid. Whatever is required, or even one out of the entire group of 15 checkpoints, this audit needs only one checkpoint to be present. So I add the group, uncheck all the 14 checkpoints which I don't need. That remaining one checkpoint will be added to the audit type. So, creating checkpoints multiple times is not required.
Okay, thank you. Santosh, when we configure all the checkpoints and all, we see that there are two type of groups which we can get created. One is general and annexure. So according to you, and when should we consider creating annexure group? In what all we can achieve in annexure group, and when should we actually consider having an annexure group created while configuring in the audit 360?
So ideally, annexure is used when there is a sampling that needs to be done. Sampling in the sense the auditor has to go through a variety of samples to arrive at his, his conclusions. That is when an annexure is used. Now, these samples could lead to what do you call it? There are different circumstances. Now, someone could ask me. You said, in partial also you can handle these samples. Yes, you said that samples audited and samples passed you can put there, and that takes care of the sample-based audit. Now, that is where the response to every single control point at a sample level need not be recorded. That is not the case always. There are certain parts of audit where what was done on each of the sample, what all were the parameters checked for each sample, what was the response at a sample level may need to be very clearly recorded. So that is when annexure is used. That is one area where annexure is used. Now, when we are using annexure, there are two possibilities that are there. One is obviously recording the compliance as per what is seen during the time of audit, but it can also be used to supply information to the auditor. On the samples, the auditor may need a certain set of information. That information also can be uploaded and given to all auditors from a central location. So, when the data is uploaded, the concerned auditee ID has to be given in the data. So then based on that, and once the audit period, the actual schedule period is defined in the uploaded document, then for all audits scheduled during that period, that scheduled period, based on the branch ID that is given, when an audit schedule is made, the corresponding data will be allocated by the system to the auditor. So he can also consume data which is provided to him centrally. So two things can happen in annexures. So when I have to do a sample-based check and the conformance or the adherence to control has to be recorded in detail, that is when annexure has to be used.
Okay. So Santosh, when you talk about the data being moved and things, we also see that whenever we create an annexure group, mapping the annexure column is mandatory, and whereas it's not mandatory for general group. So we assume that the information what we pass through the columns, it is why we are mapping the checkpoints to the column, or is there any other purpose in which we are mapping?
See, to a great extent, that is right. So there are informations passed on to the auditor, that is at one place. Plus, a certain information is required to be collected as well, whether it is in the form of adherence or in the form of input. Some information has to be collected based on the audit as well. So then for each column, an associated checkpoint, if it is defined, then the result when it comes, it will come in a very clear tabular form, which can be understood. So if that is not defined, this question will hang in the air, and we may not be able to relate that to any a data column that is present. So then that is the reason why for every field there is a certain checkpoint that needs to be configured.
Okay, but Santosh, what happens generally is that the samples what we verify would not be always the same, and every time we schedule or when we do the audits, the sample what we refer, the reference document or the sample what we verify keeps changing. So in that case, how do we have to share this information to the auditor along with?
I think I got the question. I'll take two scenarios. Okay. So in the microfinance industry, we have seen that there is a basic, in the branch audit, there is an asset check that is done. Now, the assets in a branch, it is not going to change, every month if there is a monthly branch audit that is happening, or even if it is quarterly. the number of tables, chairs, and all of that, I don't think is going to change that often. So then, in that case, what approach needs to be taken? And then, what if I'm using Annexure for auditing the number of files originated at a branch in a different use case? In a different use case, I need to check the number of files disbursed. On that, I have to take a certain sample and I have to verify that. And this is going to change every time I audit. How do we handle that? So there are two types of annexures. By definition itself, there are two types of annexures. When you start creating an annexure, the first point is to define whether an annexure will be a static annexure or a dynamic annexure. So in a static annexure, the data is going to remain static for a considerable amount of time. So therefore, we can choose static annexure and upload the data and keep it for, say, 6 months, 1 year kind of timeline. In a dynamic annexure, the data is expected to be dynamic, and therefore, for every schedule cycle, that is, whether it is monthly or quarterly, based on the frequency of audit, for every schedule cycle, a data upload has to happen. So then, by choosing static or dynamic annexures, this particular requirement of change in data, frequent change in data, use dynamic annexures. Data changes once in a while, use static annexures.
Anush, can you give us some examples of static and dynamic?
Static, as I said, generally would be for furniture and the fixed assets in a branch that needs to be checked. Those are going to be static annexures. And for dynamic annexures, it will be customer related checks, file disbursement related checks, or you want to randomly check some vouchers, local branch level vouchers which have been processed. Those are things which will be dynamic. Every time you go, it is going to be based on the audit period. Therefore, it is you're going to look at the latest few records. That will be dynamic. Any other scenario will go under fixed.
Okay, thanks, Santosh. Santosh, when you're talking about the examples, especially on the file audit, usually if you look at the audits which we do, the branch audit, there are multiple processes which we check. But in certain cases, we will only check the file. Like for example, there is a loan being dispersed, or there is an activity which KYC is being processed. So in that case, only we don't do the audit to a complete branch on their operations and other process, but we would only be doing audits on a file which has been dispersed, verifying whether all the process, the loan processes on the different stages have been well managed and things. In those scenarios, can annexure be much useful, and is there anything that we need to consider, like rather than going for a branch level, is it in a better way we can manage the file audits?
See, annexure, I think I got the question. It is about choosing, for similar looking processes, how to make the right decision. So, yes. For example, I'm doing a branch audit. As part of the branch audit, I have to visit customers. Okay, and the outcome of visiting the customers has to be part of the branch audit output. Then the customers would be put into a customer visit annexure that will become a part of the larger branch audit. Okay. So even if every customer has to be scored, it can be scored, and that's average of that score can be brought into the audit as well. Now, because Audit 360 is dynamic, I need to do a customer visit as a targeted activity, where it has got nothing to do with the branch audit at all. I want to run a parallel activity. Say again, going back to the the micro lending, there is a process called the loan utilization check. Loan utilization check at some places it's a target activity. It is not linked to any branch. So when I am approaching loan utilization check as a standalone activity, there is no need to go through the annexure. Each customer can be treated as a auditee. Or we are working with HFCs, or we are working with NBFCs, where loan files have to be audited, irrespective of a branch audit. The file audit has nothing to do with a certain branch audit. The file audit is a standalone, different activity by itself. So in that case, a file is not treated as a sample. A file is treated as an auditee itself. So that's again that's a call that can be taken depending on what level of features do you require. If the outcome of audit of a file has to be part of a branch audit, then it becomes an annexure. If a file is a standalone entity, it is done for a certain different purpose, then you can treat it as an auditee and configure the audit as a general audit as well.
Okay, Santosh, thank you. I have a last scenario, one last query from my side. I would also request if all the clients, if they have any queries, to post it in the question and answer section, which is available for them. So meanwhile, I'll just ask the last query which I have. Santosh, like when we spoke about the checkpoint creation and how the annexure to be handled and all, I have a unique case considering all the configuration and side. See, when we have users, there are users who will be playing a multiple role in an organization. Even when it comes to an audit as an activity, we would be doing a multiple role for one set of the, for example, for one set of the audit, while the same user can be playing a role of an auditor in another set of audit, which is been taken as another activity in the organization. The same user would be playing a role of a auditee. Like that, there would be a different role we would be playing. So is this scenario possible, and how can we define this in Audit 360 for a system to know in what audit which role we would be able to play? Because we know that multiple roles are allowed in system, but how do we define this?
So this is definitely possible in Audit 360. Just that there are a couple of things to be done here. One is we create the user, then we go to role management, assign the roles to the user. Then after having done that, when assigning the roles to a particular user, we'll have to consider all different roles that he needs to be using, in the context of different audits. Now, after having done that, when we are configuring an audit, in the configure audit section, there is a place to define the roles. There is a manage roles section within configure audit. So there, under the context of that particular audit, the roles to be played by different users can be defined. So that is where then such definition, for example, I am an auditor, but I have to become an auditee under a certain circumstance. Someone else is going to audit me. Or, this is a slightly difficult, scenario to imagine. So, let us consider that I'm an auditee. I'm a branch manager. In the general sense, I'm an auditee. Now my organization starts what you call a certain process wherein I have to audit different processes within the branch myself and give a self-declaration. Or my organization brings in a cross audit. Then I have to go and audit another branch, and that branch manager will audit a third branch. My branch will be audited by some other branch manager. And these are processes which are defined time and again. So then for the cross audit, I have to become an auditor. So when I create an audit called cross audit, under that cross audit, after having given the name to the audit, then defined the basic checkpoints, then added the risk levels and all. The fourth level in audit type creation, that overall module is manage roles. Under the manage roles, I can go select. There is a way to select all the users. I can select them. For selecting them, I can do filter by what you call region, this, that, all of that, their existing current primary role. I can do selection and I can assign a new role to them. And that new role assignment will only be limited to that audit that I'm creating. It has nothing to do with the user's role within the overall context of Audit 360. So even while I am a auditee in the normal sense, while retaining the role of auditee under the under the application on the whole, I can be given the role of an auditor under a specific audit. That is very much possible. So for that audit, when I log in using my user ID and password, I arrive at my normal login page. There on the top, towards the right hand side, there is a default role and switch role option. In the middle, towards the right, on top, the top section of the application. There I can go and switch the role from my current role, which is auditee, to auditor. The moment I select auditor, it will take me to the login again. I log in, I come back as an auditor, and that screen will be the screen defined for auditor related functions. And there, if there is an audit that is scheduled for me, I will see that schedule and then I can carry on with that activity. Or if I have to schedule my own audit, that is also possible because an auditor can schedule audits. So going by that logic, I have my access for the given, when I search for audits, the given audits, wherever I have been added as an auditor, that will appear. Using that, I can then go ahead and schedule my audits.
Okay. Thank you, Santosh. I am done with our queries and thanks for answering all the queries which has been consolidated and shared with you. I hope we've been able to help all the clients in making a right decision and using the features appropriately and helping them to do a very seamless audit. So Santosh, I just request you to wait for a couple of more minutes to see if there are any queries coming from the attendees.
Sure, definitely.
Any queries from the attendees side, please post it on the question and answer session. We would share that with Santosh and get it clarified. I think there are no queries, and I just thank all the attendees for making time to attend this session. And I hope we are you're being able to serve the purpose of the webinar through a webinar and helping you all to understand the features well. I think we have
Oh, that's
no
okay.
queries. Yeah. So thank you all. I hope the session was more useful. Request you all to share your feedback. We will be catching
If
up.
you are looking forward, one request from my side, as I always say at the end of the webinar, please do share the modules for which you are expecting more clarity. And if you have questions that are there, please do send it as part of these feedback forms. We will include those in sessions like these and try and make it more useful for all of you. The idea of this webinar is to make sure that in addition to the individual, the training sessions that we are having, the individual onboarding, handholding, whatever we are doing, we bring it onto a common platform where uh, where individual doubts when clarified helps the larger audience, and we can share ideas with each other, so we get as a community we get benefited. Yeah, I think that's all. So we have a question on this. There is this one suggestion on doing a session on the scoring logic as such. We will definitely consider that. Depending on more suggestions coming in, we will choose when to have it. So if there are more participants wanting for this scoring approach, we'll definitely push it up higher in terms of priority. Otherwise, maybe we can do a one-on-one session or something like that and handle this separately. But I encourage all of you to share your feedback. There is a survey format that will come in the mail. We will also share the recording to this webinar with all of you, which you can use for your future reference.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. So, good evening to those who are towards the end of the day. Good morning to people who have joined us from Nigeria. Please do have a good day. And for those in India, I think there is you have to negotiate with the afternoon. There is we hope the rest of the day is productive for you as well. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Let's catch up in the next webinar.